Now that Black Adam has released to the public, it is time to dive in and rank all the DCEU villains. Now, Black Adam is technically not the villain of that movie, even though the trailers make it out to seem to be. There is a true villain in there, so there might be spoilers in this video if you have not seen Black Adam yet, so make sure to go watch that, come back, and then hit that like and subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on any sort of geeky content over here, because I love talking movies. I've already ranked all the DCEU heroes, so let's jump into the villains now. And dear God, the DCEU, as I was putting this list together, I might have missed some, and I'm not including the Suicide Squad characters because they're actually like anti-heroes in their versions, but I didn't include them in the heroes. Don't ask why, it's just my brain didn't think they should be in either of the list. So with that said, yeah, this is gonna be fun. At my number 19 is Doomsday. Now, I'm actually in the minority where I go as far to say I don't mind the interpretation of how they used Doomsday in Batman v Superman. I actually like the character design. Looks like an ugly-ass Ninja Turtle, but I don't mind it. But saying that enough is also there is zero development, zero character drama, any sort of thing like that. It is one of the worst things that they have done in the DCEU, just for the fact that it is not set up correctly, even in the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. It's there, but it's really just used as a crux for our heroes to stop fighting and to fight some big-ass monster, and I think this could have been used in a different capacity. Brings me to my number 18, which is actually Sabacc from Black Adam. Now, Sabacc is this devil-looking mother heller from hell, literally, and for me, performance-wise, the actor does a decent job. The design of Sabacc is freaking awesome, but there is zero development. There's zero character interaction. There is really zero stuff. They just needed a villain that could fight Black Adam. Like, that is definitively what this character is used for, and it sucks because I think Sabacc is actually a really cool villain from the comics. I wish they would have used him in a better capacity. Now at my number 17 is the Enchantress from Suicide Squad, where she does this weird dance, and I absolutely hated that. The only reason she's a little bit above everyone else is because I think Cara Delevingne gave a lot of subtle tones to this, and we actually do get a little bit more of an insight because we see what Enchantress is doing to this one character, and I like that. At my number 16 now, though, Jesus Christ, Jared Leto's Joker, which I think with more screen time probably could have gotten a little bit more on this list, but in general, he's inconsequential to this story in my opinion. Like, if you take him out, it doesn't really add much. Either Harley's story or even the Suicide Squad story, and I understand in the original cut he was more of a villain, if you've read up all this history of what this character was supposed to do, but yeah, not good. At my number 15 is Ares. Now, I actually thought Ares would have been a badass villain. I think he is a great foe for Wonder Woman, but Ares is used in a context of ways, and while the reveal is kind of obvious, the thing for me in this role is why I watched it, I was like, oh, we're gonna go to that. It really is just, again, used for someone for Wonder Woman to fight, and while there was a lot of cool moments to it, I wish Ares would have been developed a little bit better throughout the story. My number 14 is General Poision. Now, this one's a little bit higher up on there just because I do think that what she's able to do for Wonder Woman is actually really important to the overall story, and I actually was really impressed with the performance there as well. Now, that's not saying a lot because she's barely in the movie, but what she is used for works for me. Now, my number 13 is Lex Luthor, played by Jesse Eisenberg. This is a very point of a contention because some of you guys absolutely hate this character and some of you guys love it, and for me, I like him. I think he's not actually as bad as people make him out to be. I think once you see the Ultimate Edition, it does add, okay, I understand what he's trying to do with his story, I understand what he's trying to do here, and I think if they were to bring him back in a new capacity, you could really flesh this character out in a great way. Will they? Probably not, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Now, my number 12 is Cheetah. Now, I actually love Cheetah from the comics. I think Kristen Wiig actually did a really good job playing this character. My biggest issue with Cheetah, though, is, again, zero development turning to that villain. I think Wonder Woman 1984 really should have just focused on Maxwell Lord, and then at the very end she does become Cheetah, and then the third film would be that as the main antagonist, but sadly they pushed both together and I don't think it worked out overall. Now, my number 11 is Victor Zsasz. Now, I like this character from the comics, and the way they use him in Birds of Prey is actually very menacing and scary, and while he's very much just a side antagonist to the entire story because of Black Mask, I think Victor does an amazing job in the performance, and that added some elevated scares to the entire story. At my number 10 is, of course, the 7 deadly sins from Shazam. Now, while they are really just used as, again, side villains for Shazam and the Shazam family to fight, there's a lot of horror elements infused in there that I think David F. Sandberg really developed. I love the design of these things, and I actually, if they would have just developed them a little bit more, I do think they would actually be higher up on this list. but we'll talk about another villain from Shazam pretty soon. At my number 9 is Black Manta. Now, I fully expect, since he is the main villain in Aquaman 2, for me to actually love this character even more, because I do think the design, the costume, everything of that, I think Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is absolutely incredible in this role. There's just, again, not really much development for this character, not much for this character to do. And I know Aquaman had a lot to do, but that you can clearly tell what kind of got the end of the stick for this role. And I kind of wish there was a little bit more story for him, but if we're just talking badass level, I loved him in this. And at my number 8 is Dr. Sivanna. Now, I'm probably going to be saying that wrong. I always say his name wrong. I apologize. So I'm sure you'll already be typing around in the comment section if you haven't already, but I love Mark Strong. I think he's such a very underrated actor, and I think he's really good in this role. And the fact that they actually built this character up on a character development scale made me really happy. Just in the opening scene, you can kind of understand where he's coming from. Personally, for me, that was one of the things that actually elevated this character a lot, and I know, and I can't wait to see what they do with him next. And now at my number 7 is Black Mask. Now, I don't love everything they did with this character in Birds of Prey, but I love everything that Ewan McGregor did with this character in that film. I think he plays such a suave, charming, but very menacing version of Black Mask, and it kind of sucks that they killed him off in this world, because I think he would have been a cool antagonist to see for the future of like a Gotham City or a more underbelly type of tone to the DCEU. But for what we got of Ewan McGregor in the role, I thought his performance was stellar. At my number 6 is Ocean Master. Now, Ocean Master is actually one of those characters that I think, again, will be developed more in the Aquaman sequel. I've heard that he's actually one of the main characters in there, and it's going to be interesting to see how that works, because I think Patrick is amazing in this role. I think for me, the reason that I really dig this is because I think when you look at character development, they do a really good job building his character up and seeing this sibling rivalry between both Aquaman and Ocean Master. And again, I think both of their performance really elevate this villain up to that next level, and he is just a badass in this movie. I loved his armor of choice. At my number 5 is Amanda Waller. Yes, Amanda Waller is a villain in both Suicide Squad. She is very selfish. She does what she needs to do. It is not just for the good of the country. She does what is good for her and her best interests, which makes her a very interesting villain. Now, while she's not always scheming to try and take over the world, she is making the choices behind the scenes, and I make her out to be a villain in both Suicide Squad movies, and she is absolutely incredible. Plus, it's Viola Davis, so who would not admit to her being an amazing actress? And now on number 4, this one's kind of like, if I were to like actually look at this like in context, is this like kind of just a side thing for the Suicide Squad? Yes. But I'm so biased on this one. Starro is at my number 4. I love what James Gunn was able to develop with this. And like, the one line that sits with me is when he's like, I just wanted to be floating among the stars. It brings a lot of levity, and when you rewatch this movie, it kind of just like hits that it's this creature, this monster that the United States took the experiment on, and that's why it's pissed. That's why it's mad. It didn't get to just do what it wanted to do, to relax, live. And that's what kind of sucks, but I do love that it's a giant kaiju. I do think there was actually a little bit more development to it, and maybe it should be lower on this list, but personally for me, on a biasness, I can't believe they even did Starro in live action, but I love that they did. My number 3 is Maxwell Lord. Now, a lot of this is because of Pedro Pascal's performance. I think he gives a lot of levity to this character, and specifically, this is a character that I actually don't really like in the comic books. So the fact that I actually did like what they were able to do with him in 1984 was splendid. I actually love that their last fight really wasn't a last fight. It was more of a conversation, and what he is trying to do to the entire world makes sense because of what Maxwell Lord wants to dominate and control. And again, Pascal gives all of that and more, and I was thoroughly impressed with his performance overall, and that's why it makes him my number 3. And again, that's not saying much. Like, I don't think a lot of the villains in the DCU are developed very well. That's a lot of the problems that the Marvel universe has, but the ones that are really developed are really great, and that's where I jump into my number 2, which is Steppenwolf. Now, this is not the version from the Justice League version. That version is fucking garbage. The new version of Zack Snyder's Justice League is the definitive version, personally, for me when it comes down to Steppenwolf. And I actually think Steppenwolf is actually a very important villain and one of my favorite villains of the last 10 years for comic book movies. And the reason I say that is because when you look at Zack Snyder's Justice League, you actually come to care and understand why he is doing what he needs to do, what his motivations is. And just in the subtle CGI on his face, they make you care and understand him in so many different lights, and I was thoroughly impressed with that. Plus, he's pretty damn badass, if I don't say so myself. And I didn't include Darkseid on this list because he literally did not do a single thing in that movie. It was cool to see. If we ever get to see him in the future, he'll be included in this list. But my number 1, of this all is the same number one for my DCU hero. My number one for the hero was Superman, and my number one here is General Zodd. General Zodd for me is Michael Shannon's one of my favorite performances he's ever done. I think General Zodd is one of the best villains in the entire comic book space. I love how Zack Snyder decided to use him as really much a foil for Superman, specifically as his first big villain to really tackle to save Earth. And I think, again, when you look at this character, General Zodd is a character that is just trying to do what is best for his people and what he believes in that. And when an antagonist is so well written to the point of where you can be like, okay, I understand what you're doing, dude, but let's not do that. It is fascinating to see his determination, and I was truly, really impressed with that overall. But other than that, that is my DCEU villain ranking. Let me know down below what your villain ranking is. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll make sure to check you guys out soon. So, of course, until next time, stay classy.